Hi, welcome to your Strategic Dining Services online video training. Today we're going to take you through the steps to produce focaccia. Imagine producing breads like this for your residents, the guests, and sales and marketing events. And I think the process that we're going to show you today will show you just how easy this is. To get started, we're going to start with reviewing the 6 basic steps. The first being scaling your ingredients, then mixing. Then we're going to allow the dough to ferment. Next, we're going to divide and shape the dough. We're going to allow it to proof. And the last step is baking. So, first step is to scale the ingredients. Okay, to produce this basic focaccia dough, you only need about 6 ingredients, excluding the toppings: flour, water, salt, honey, olive oil, and yeast. I did want to take a second to talk about 2 primary ingredients. The first is the yeast. We're using a fresh yeast, and basically what this does is allow you to mix the yeast in straight into the dough without having to first activate it in warm water. If you can't find fresh yeast, you can use dry active yeast or an instant yeast. The second point I wanted to make sure that you got is that we are going to scale the ingredients using a scale. We're going to weigh all of the ingredients. We're not going to measure them by volume. This is very key in making sure that you have a precise recipe, and it is the most accurate way. So we have basically 5 pounds of flour, about 3.5 pounds of water, 1.25 ounces of salt, just over 1.25 ounces of honey, olive oil, and about 1.25 ounces of yeast. So the next step is the second step in this bread baking process, which is mixing the dough. So with a medium-sized Hobart mixer, we're going to start with about 95% of the water. The key there is the reason that we add the water first is in the bread baking process, you never want to add additional flour once you've started the process, but it is okay to add more water. So start with the water, then we're going to throw in some olive oil and the honey and salt. We're going to give that just a quick mix, only for about 10 seconds or so on low speed, just to get that salt incorporated. Then we're going to add the flour. We can add, again, all of the flour at this point. And last, the yeast. Again, because it's fresh yeast, we don't need to reactivate that in warm water. Then on our lowest speed, we're going to let that go for just 1 or 2 minutes, and all that's doing is pulling the flour together and starting the dough process. Okay, once that dough's come together after just a couple minutes on low speed, we're going to turn that up to a medium speed and let that go for about 7 to 9 more minutes. That's all it takes. Okay, after the dough has mixed for about 9 minutes or so, we're going to turn that off and we're going to take it out, throw it in a plastic bin or even a bucket. And we're going to throw that in the fridge overnight to ferment. Now you have to admit that's pretty easy. I mean, it took us about 5 minutes to scale the ingredients, another about 10 minutes to mix the ingredients, and that's it for the day. You don't need to do any more at this point. You're just going to cover it and throw it in the fridge. One thing when you're covering this, you want to make sure that you cover it nice and tight. Notice how big a container I'm using for just 5 pounds of dough, and that's because during the fermentation process overnight, this dough will about triple in size, so you want to make sure you give it plenty of room. Once it's wrapped, go straight into the fridge. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, we've taken the dough out of the refrigerator and it's taken time to ferment overnight. You can see that it's about doubled in size. We're going to lay it out on a clean flat surface. We're going to lightly dust that with a little bit of flour. And then we're going to cut the dough in half. As we're at the dividing and shaping of the dough stage. Now this particular recipe, that 5 pounds of flour, produces 2 half sheet pans of focaccia. So what we want to do for this focaccia is we want to roll this out to within about 1 inch of the edge of the pan. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of form this dough into a rectangle just to get a basic shape. Once I've done that, I'm going to just start to roll it out a little bit. Again, if you need just a little bit of flour, you don't need a lot. And you can kind of work the dough a little bit, pressing it out and stretching it as you go. Again, keep trying to keep that rectangular shape of the sheet pan as you go. And you only need to get the dough, again, to the size of about within 1 inch to 2 inches of the sides of the pan. You don't need to go all the way to the edge of the pan. I've got a half sheet pan here. I'm going to just take a little bit of olive oil. And we're going to just coat the edge of the pan and the bottom. And we're going to take our dough and we're going to lay that out, again, stretching to within about 1 inch. If it's not perfect, that's okay. What's going to happen is we're now going to allow this dough, once we've topped it, to proof. And once in the proofing process, that dough will stretch out to the edge of the pan and will fill the pan completely. So we're going to show you 2 different ones here. So I'm going to take just a minute to go ahead and stretch this second dough out. Okay, once your doughs have been stretched out, they're ready to be topped. Let me grab some ingredients. Okay, once we've stretched the dough, we're ready to put the toppings on. I'm going to show you 2 different toppings. One is more of a traditional topping, one that you might typically see on focaccia. Then we're going to try one that's kind of unique and very different. And again, we want to kind of spark your imagination in trying new things. So the first one is just kind of a classic play on a caprese salad, basically. We're going to start with the stretched dough, and I've got here some sliced tomatoes, some mozzarella, some Parmesan, some feta, and some fresh basil. Now, one thing you'll notice when I start with the fresh basil, I'm going to actually put that on first. You may ask why, because in a lot of times you'll see a salad or something, the basil's placed on top. And the reason is this dough is going to take about 35 minutes to cook in the oven. And if that basil, the fresh basil leaves are on top, they tend to burn. So I like to put those on the underside. So I've got some torn basil here. Then we're going to top it with the tomato slices. Now notice how thin those tomato slices are. And the reason is I don't want a real wet topping that's going to sog out my dough. Now when you're preparing these kind of breads, one thing you want to keep in mind is, again, those ingredients that tend to burn, things like sun-dried tomatoes and fresh herbs, those should be placed under the cheeses. So just try to keep that in mind. Once I have my tomatoes on, we're going to top that with a little bit of cheese. We have, again, some fresh mozzarella, some Parmesan cheese, and finally some feta. And again, the kind of combination of ingredients is really up to you. Once we have all that completed, we're going to stick that in a warm spot and allow it to double in size. So we'll come back to that one. I did want to show you this sweet dough. So again, this is my second piece of focaccia. It's been stretched out to within about half an inch or so. You can see this one's already starting to proof a little bit and stretch out to the edge. Now this one's kind of unusual. I've got some unique ingredients here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle on some shaved fennel. This is fresh fennel that's been sliced very, very thin. And I'm going to top that. Now one thing I wanted to show you is you'll notice when I add these ingredients to the top of the dough, I'm spreading them out all the way to the edge. In fact, going almost a little heavy on the edge. You'll notice on this particular dough, I did not do that. And I wanted to show you why. The finished product is going to end up looking like this. And you notice that the ingredients that have gone on top have been placed all the way to the edge, and they look really nice all the way around. On this one, the tomato basil, it was put together similar to this. So as the dough proofed, you can see that the ingredients weren't all the way to the edge. So you just want to keep that in mind. Depends on what kind of look you're looking for, but just keep that in mind. All right, so we've placed the fennel, the fresh fennel on there. Then I have here some kind of sweet ingredients. We have some cut red grapes. So we're going to add these, again, going all the way to the edge. And then I have here some caramelized onions. Basically all I did was take some fresh onions and saute those in a pan until they were nice and caramelized. We're going to add those to the top. Lastly, I have a little bit of crushed fennel seed. We're going to add that by sprinkling it on. There's a little seasoning. We're going to add a touch of salt. I'm actually going to add salt to both of these. And a little cracked black pepper. And lastly, on this grape and fennel bread, I'm going to drizzle it with two things. One, a little bit of honey. And a little touch of garlic oil. All right, that's it. Now these are ready to be proofed. They'll go into a warm spot They should take about, in an ideal setting, they should take 45 minutes to an hour to proof up nicely. One thing that I want you to keep in mind is when preparing these, one of the beauties of focaccia is that it should be studded with the ingredients. And to get these ingredients down into the dough, you want to take your fingers and you want to press these ingredients, stipple them into the dough. You don't want to flatten the ingredients, you just want to use your fingertips and create some little holes and allow the ingredients to get all the way down in the dough. Once that's done, again, we're going to place that into a warm spot, and it should take about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. All right, our focaccia that has been topped has been allowed to proof. It's taken about 45 minutes, and again, it's doubled in size. So we're going to take it down, and we're going to do one more last pressing. Again, using our fingertips, we're going to press the ingredients down into the dough. And that goes straight into an oven set at about 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes or so. Once completed and baked, they should come out looking about like this. A nice dough for you to present to your, or a nice cooked bread for you to present to your residents, guests, and family members. I did want to stress just how easy this process was. The first day, we only took about 15 minutes to scale the ingredients, mix the ingredients, then we threw it in the plastic tub and let it ferment overnight. The second day, only about 15 minutes of production, again, rolling out the dough, placing the ingredients on top, allowing it to do a final proofing and baking. In total, only about 30 minutes. And to produce bread like this, I think it's well worth it. I look forward to seeing you in your next training video. I'm Jeff Kelly.